Welcome back, Who Dat Nation. I hope you had an eventful free agency tampering period, day one. We're talking Saints news and rumors after NFL tampering during the free agency period has officially opened up. If you missed out earlier today, I put out a video saying the last-second rumors, the last-second buzz that I'm seeing and I'm trying to cover and talk about before things open. We put that video out at like 8:30 or something this morning, so that's why you need to subscribe. That's why you need to subscribe and turn on your notifications, because not only are we providing content throughout the day and throughout these busy periods, but we're coming in early. We're staying late. We're going to be, me and my guy, producer Seaman, are going to be in the studio every day this week from like 8 a.m. until like 8 or 9 p.m. because we're not missing a damn thing. So you better lock us in, subscribe for all your Saints free agency, all your Saints draft, and all your Saints offseason coverage. It's Saints content by Saints fans for Saints fans. So without further ado, let's talk free agency rumors. So, this is a juicy one from Shefty. Our running back from the Chargers, Austin Ekeler, is requesting permission to speak with other teams about a potential trade after preliminary talks with the team aimed at a contract extension, did not progress, his agent Cameron Weiss told ESPN. Now, this is interesting. This is juicy. I kind of like this one. I think that this might be an interesting guy to bring in because when you take a look at what he was able to do last season in 17 games played for the Los Angeles Chargers, 204 carries, 915 yards, 13 touchdowns. Now, let me ask you something right here. Do these last two columns remind you of anybody? Does that great pass-catching ability remind you of anybody that's on the Saints roster? 170 receptions, 722 yards on those receptions, 5 touchdowns on the ground, 18 touchdowns in total. Does that remind you of anybody? Because it reminds me of somebody that's on our current depth chart. It reminds me of my guy, running back one, Alvin Kamara. The dude's a pass catcher. The dude's good in open space. The dude is good when you put the ball in his hands. And as the running back depth chart sits right now, you're going to see Mark Ingram likely leave. You're likely going to see David Johnson leave. Dwayne Washington, maybe you bring him back. Eno Benjamin, maybe you bring him back. But that being said, it's kind of an empty depth chart and very underwhelming one, which is why I think if I'm Mickey Loomis and I'm Carr Harley, I'm freaking making that damn call because Austin Ekeler could be the perfect Alvin Kamara replacement if and when Kamara, y'all been on my butt about that recently because, people say things differently, but Alvin Kamara would be easily replaced by Austin Ekeler because Kamara is such a good pass catcher and he's such a dynamic piece of the offense, and so is Austin Ekeler. So if I'm the front office for the New Orleans Saints, I'm trading for Ekeler. I'm at least calling the office and I'm seeing what's happening. And my plan would be trade for Austin Ekeler. He can fill those running back one reps while Kamara is facing his suspension, which could be anywhere from 4 to 6 games, maybe more. I don't see it being more than 6 games. I think it's only going to be 4 to 6. But that being said, I don't know. I also think you go get Tyjae Spears in round 2 or 3. If you miss out on Austin Ekeler, we can talk about another option. I like Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama in the draft as well. That'd probably be a day one pick if you had to go get him because I don't think he falls to 40. But Who Dat Nation, there's a lot to talk about. So before we get to that, I want you to go down and take advantage of the ad break that you might get hit with. Should the Saints trade for Austin Ekeler? Type T for trade, type P for pass. Let me know in the comment section, Who Dat Nation. I'll be interacting with all of y'all down there. All right, so here are the moves made today during free agency. And then at the end of it, on the tail end of things, we'll just kind of talk about the general moves that were made at the end of the show or before this today, like early last weekend and late last week. So Cameron Jordan has been restructured. The Saints saved $10 million by reworking this deal. That's a very good thing. The Saints are able to save some money, cut out their cap space. Remember, they were like $60 million over the cap. They restructured a lot of guys, including Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu, Taysom Hill. We'll get to a couple other players that they restructured later in the show, but this is an important thing, and wham, bam, thank you, Cam, for doing so. 66 tackles for the year, 8.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. Cameron Jordan, that being said, here's the unfortunate part. he is going to need some help. He doesn't have a lot of help on the depth chart, which, again, we'll get into. But here's my top 4 team needs, and this is in no particular order. I think that the Saints need a running back. Regardless of the Alvin Kamara situation, you got to go get a running back. Even if the dude didn't do anything and behaved perfectly fine in Vegas, which doesn't happen, during the Pro Bowl weekend, I'd still say you need to go get a running back. Defensive tackle, especially after today, you need defensive tackle. I think safety depth. I like Smoke Monday. I'm really excited to see what he can do. The UDFA out of Auburn who tore his ACL last offseason, I'm so excited to see what he can do. But I think that bringing in some more depth and more options, I think is very healthy and a very smart decision for the Saints. And then also wide receiver, for obvious reasons. You can never have too many wide receivers, never have too many playmakers. But Who Dat Nation, let me know. What move do you want the Saints to make during the rest of free agency? Like, what's the next move you want them to make? Like, tomorrow morning, you wake up at 9 a.m. What's the move that you want that push notification to be? What video do you want us making? Let me know in the comment section what move you want the Saints to make next. All right, so let's talk about Alvin Kamara, who also had his contract restructured. With that, the Saints were able to save about $7 million against the salary cap. And this is huge. And also worth noting, you don't have to pay Alvin, and I could have this wrong. I want to say that I read this correctly, and I saw it, I believe, from Nick Underhill or Ross Jackson, one of the two. But I'm almost positive you don't actually have to pay Alvin Kamara, during his suspension. You only have to pay him for the games he plays. So that's, only 4 to 6 games you're not paying him, but still, it's less money. Not less money, but that's just, worth noting, and it's interesting. But the Saints save $7 million about against the salary cap, which is very, very big. But also shout out to our guy, Marshon Lattimore. He also got his contract restructured. And I know you see these two colors, and it's not fun to talk about, but we have to talk about them. But let's talk about the good. Marshon Lattimore, he freed up about $10 million in cap space, and clap it up for Kai Harley, clap it up for Mickey Loomis, clap it up for the gang, because once again, everyone said the Saints are in cap hell. Seaman, how many times do we have to have this conversation? It doesn't matter how bad the cap space is. The Saints are going to make it work, and Nick Wright, I'm calling you Nick wrong because you're a fraud and you're a liar and you're a moron. You're saying that the Saints are running a Ponzi scheme, but you don't know the numbers. You don't know how it works. So everyone get in the comment section and type F in for F Nick Wright, or as I like to call him, Nick Wrong, because that dude sucks. So let's talk about some unfortunate things, though, because wow, I'm as red as this background for this graphic, so that's unfortunate. Anyway, David Onyemata, this sucks. I talked about it earlier today. I was like, man, if you can go do anything, re-sign David Onyemata, bring him back, because the Saints are lacking in the defensive tackle depth chart. David Onyemata last year, 43 tackles, 5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, and a fumble recovery. Really came into his own, really found his step, and showed a lot of growth and a lot of utility and how important he can be to a defense, especially in the second half of last season. I'm excited. It sucks to see him go, but that being said, he is a depth piece. He's a guy that obviously you like, and he's a talented player, but I also think for what the Falcons are paying him, it's not the end of the world. I don't think it's that bad of a deal. And plus, I think that you can go get some younger and cheaper talent in the draft that can immediately make an impact, which we'll get into later. But in terms of the other moves made for the NFC South that affects the New Orleans Saints, Shy Tuttle, he is headed to the Carolina Panthers, unfortunately. Another one of the Saints' depth pieces heading out to another team in the NFC South. If I can just say this, and I'm going to say it, and if it makes you mad, then I'm targeting you. The rest of the NFC South wants to be the Saints so bad. They want to be the Saints so damn badly, and it's hilarious because the Falcons bringing in Von Bell, the Falcons bringing in David Onyemata, Jesse Bates, which he's not a Saint, but still, you guys are idiots, and it's hilarious. But also, here's some more moves that were made throughout the week. earlier last week or during the weekend. We did some shorts over most of these guys. We talked about them in videos, so if you missed any of that, please feel free to check out any of our previous videos. Juwan Johnson, shout out to you, JJ. Shout out to you, Mr. Reliable. 2-year, $12 million contract. The UDFA out of Oregon, was a wide receiver, transferred or converted to tight end, has earned every damn penny of this contract. And I am so excited to see Juwan Johnson back in the black and gold. He was a massive piece of the Saints offense. Over half of his catches were touchdowns or first downs. So Mr. Reliable is a very fitting name. JT Gray, special teams ace, the special teams all-star. 3 years, $9.6 million. It's nice to see Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley invest in the special teams and not see some of those talented players go. And then Tano Passanio, 2 years, $5 million deal. He's going to be back. It's going to be exciting to have him as a depth piece against that Saints defensive line. But, guys, I want you to grade free agency day one for me. Obviously, the Saints lost a handful of people. Obviously, the Saints wanted to sign or may want to still sign some people that they haven't brought in yet. So let me know in the comment section, A, B, C, D, or F. I would probably say a B-. I would have liked to bring back David Onyemata. That would probably make it an A. That being said, it ain't the end of the world. Sometimes I think the best moves that you do make are the ones that you don't make too. So at least the Saints didn't bring in somebody who's terrible and overpay somebody like the Falcons do every single year, because F the Falcons and they're all a bunch of idiots. That being said, here's some free agent targets that could fill in for the defensive line depth chart. And we can go to that here in a little bit. Fletcher Cox, he is a stud out of Philly. Dalvin Tomlinson, would be great to see him possibly come to the New Orleans Saints. Sheldon Rankins, could a reunion be in store? That would be pretty fun. Michael Brockers, and then A'Shawn Robinson. I feel like A'Shawn Robinson is the most realistic depth chart piece for the Saints because he just fits what they do, and he could be a good rotational piece. And that's part of Dennis Allen's thing. That's part of his whole scheme on the defense is rotating guys in and out very often. And A'Shawn Robinson, a very good, or a tenured vet, 42 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 QB hits. Obviously, you want to see him have some sacks. But like I said last week about the Rams, nothing about the Rams were good. So the fact that he did those numbers is still pretty impressive. But this is why I bring this up, because the depth chart is disgusting right now. It's just plain and simply put, just bad. It's not appealing. Kentavious Street, sure. He's not terrible. Malcolm Roach, sure, not terrible. Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan, I really do have faith on those two to hold it down on the edges. But the defensive line is where things get tough. There's not very many players here. Like, you can see how little or how few people we have on the depth chart, how much of a need it is for defensive tackle. I mean, you got to go address this. And if you want to go the draft route, here's the 5 guys that I would explore. I will say, seeing David Onyemata leave, really, and Shy Tuttle on, for that matter, that right there kind of, not solidifies, but that tells me that the Saints want to go defensive tackle in the draft in the first round at number 29 overall. And here's 5 guys that I really like. Jalen Carter out of Georgia. I don't know if he falls. I seriously doubt it. But if his situation makes him fall later and he's at 29 and the Saints don't pick him, I might burn my Saints gear. I might burn everything I own that's black and gold. That's just straight up. Kalijah Kancey. This dude, the measurables, the workout, just it is second to none in the NFL draft. This kid is a speed demon. He's a wrecker. He is literally Aaron Donald 2.0. And we'll go into Kalijah Kancey because he's one of my favorite prospects in great detail later this week, so which, be sure to subscribe. But I think that Kalijah Kancey could be an interesting guy. Mozzie Smith, also out of Michigan, could be an interesting defensive tackle. Maybe you get him in the late first round. Maybe you can get him at pick number 40. Maybe, maybe not. Brian Bresee out of Clemson. Brian Bresee, I've seen it pronounced both ways. I think that he's an intriguing option, but I don't know if he's my number 1 option. Siaki Ika, though, the former LSU Tiger, Baylor Bear, could be an absolute game wrecker. This dude is a walking wrecking ball. He takes up double teams. He is a run stopper through and through, and I think that he could be an interesting addition to the Saints defense. So, guys, let me know in the comment section. Name a defensive tackle that you want the Saints to sign or draft or trade for. Doesn't matter what it is. I want you to know, or I want you to let me know a defensive tackle that the Saints should add during this offseason. Who Dat Nation, it is always a pleasure hanging out with you. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you missed out today's video earlier, I encourage you to go watch it. But please subscribe, lock us in, turn on notifications, because we're going to be live this week for a free agency frenzy with my guy, producer Seeps. Lock us in, join us this week, and subscribe today.